I moved into a new house recently, and it's just a bunch of white walls. I was looking to put up an accent wall, in particular in my home office, so it could serve as a background to Zoom calls. I did some research and came across this product. It's a natural wood product, and it comes in 3 sets of colors. There's a set of 3 shades of brown, a set of 3 shades of gray, and then a collection of 7 colors that includes the grays, the browns, and a black color. You can also order a sample set of all the colors, which is what I did and highly recommend as a starting point. One thing I really like about this product is that it's double-sided. It has a circular saw cut on one side and a flat saw cut on the other, so it gives you some more options when you go to put up the wall. I'll put a link to the product in the description. Here's what my sample pack looks like. I've got the 3 browns leaning up against the wall, and below those the 3 grays, and then off to the right is the black color that only comes in the mixed box. I like all these colors except for maybe the lightest brown, so to get started I ordered a box of the grays and a box of the mixed. Alexa, notifications.
One new notification from Amazon Shopping. Wall in a box has arrived.
So let's open up the mixed box. One thing you'll notice is that these boards are different heights. They're all supposed to be about 5.5 inches, but there are some pretty significant differences that create a few problems when you go to put these on the wall. I'll talk more about that later. So inside each box there's 14 boards. In this case there's 2 each of the 3 browns, the 3 grays, and then the black color. Some of the reviews I read for this product said that 2 of the 3 gray colors were too similar to each other, and based on this mix box that seems to be true, but let's open up the gray box and see if we get some more variation. So here are the 3 gray colors from the gray box, and I think you'll see that there is pretty good variation, and if you wanted a gray wall I think you'd do just fine ordering a gray box. But for my project, I liked some of the dark browns, and I definitely like that black, which you can only get in the mixed box. We need to figure out how many boxes we need, so let's measure the wall. My wall measures about 130 by 121, so do some math to square inches, convert to square feet, divide by 25 square feet per box, and round up for scrap, and I need 5 boxes.
Wall in a box has arrived.
I already have 2 boxes. I need 3 more, so I ordered 2 more gray boxes and 1 more mixed. When you take those 5 boxes and separate them by color, this is what you get. Mostly grays because I have 3 boxes of grays, but also the browns and the black. I put the sample pack on their corresponding colors, and except for that very first gray, which seemed a little light, I think the rest were pretty true to color. The lightest brown is a little light for my project. I had some ebony stain sitting around, and you can stain these boards. So I put a test coat on the sample, and I think it works well, and it'll match the rest of the boards. I also had some walnut stain sitting around, and I tried that on a couple of the test boards, but I didn't like how it turned out. We only have 4 of these light colored boards, so pretty short work in staining, and I remembered to wear a glove this time. One neat feature of this company is that they have a wall builder website where you can go in and enter the dimensions of your boards and the dimensions of your wall, and it'll show you a picture of what that'll look like. And then you can drag and drop the different colors of grays, browns, and mixed, and if you're happy with the design you can print it out and use it as a template for building your wall. The issue I had with it is that these boards are about 5.5 inches wide, but the website only gives you choices of 6 and 8 inches wide, and so it won't properly calculate the number of rows that you need for your wall. The next step is to mark out the studs on the walls. This was new construction, so I was lucky to have in-progress video. This video is not so helpful of the wall, but I did have a video of the back, which is in a bathroom. It's got a lot of plumbing and electrical, so we want to be a little bit careful with nailing. On the other hand, it is 2x6 framing, so I think there's a decent amount of clearance between the other side of this wall and the plumbing and electrical. I've never had a lot of luck with electronic stud finders, so I've been using this magnetic one. It's just got a couple of strong magnets, and you're locating the screws that are holding the drywall to the studs. And then you can mark the studs. I find it to be very reliable, and I'll put a link in the description below. Once I had enough markings, I just grabbed a straight edge. A 2x4 worked fine, and I connected the dots. Just one outlet on this wall, so I'll take that guy off. It's white and that won't match the wall, so I'll change out the color at the end. One question is whether you want to take off the baseboard and run the boards all the way to the ground. To me, that's a lot of extra work, and this product is pretty thin. I think it'll look fine sitting on top of the baseboard. Alright, at long last, let's fire up some tools. I think this project requires an air gun. I'm not sure how you would do it efficiently without one. The general flow here is to pick a row at a time. My wall is almost 3 boards wide, so we'd pick 3 boards from the color stack, trying to keep the colors random within the row and from row to row. As I mentioned earlier, there's variation in the height of the board, so it's important to try to pick boards of the same height to minimize the amount of cutting. That's pretty easy to do early in the project because you got a lot of boards to choose from. But as the stack starts to dwindle, it gets a little trickier later in the project to both find boards that are the same height and still random in color. I put a fair amount of time into checking level on this first row in the hopes that I could just keep stacking and stacking and not having to re-level all the time. That turned out to be only partially true, and I ran into a little trouble later in the project that we'll talk about. So when you get to the end of the wall, you just mark your board for cutting. The miter saw seems like a pretty essential part of this project. These are thin boards, so I suppose you could cut them by hand. It would just take a little longer. A lot of my time in this project was marking boards, taking them out to the garage, making the cut, and bringing them back in. I didn't mark the studs that are at the end of the wall, but they're there, and that's an important nail point. Next row, same process, picking out 3 boards, making sure they're the same height. You want to stagger the starting length of each row so that all the seams don't line up. I think I ended up using 4 or 5 different starting lengths. The outlet fell right in the middle of the second row, so I marked where that would be on the board, traced it out with a square, and used a drill and a jigsaw to notch out started out using a 16 gauge 1.5 inch nail, and that turned out to be overkill. It was leaving marks in the boards as they went up. So I switched to an 18 gauge 1.25 inch nail, higher gauge, meaning smaller nail size, and that seemed to work well. A 1.25 inch nail means we've got 1/4 inch of plank and 1/2 inch of drywall, and then we get 1/2 inch of the nail going into the stud, which is plenty. This is a lightweight product. Some of these boards are bowed, and so you'll see me putting them on the wall, flipping them over, trying to find the best fit. Sometimes that works. Other times I would just set the bowed board aside for use later in the project. And as I got to the top of the wall and I had fewer boards to choose from, a number of those boards were bowed, so I had to make use of the table saw to straighten them out. Obligatory safety note: I'm not wearing eye protection or ear protection. Whatever tools you're using, the manufacturer will recommend safety precautions, so follow those. The wall goes up pretty fast. I'd say the most time-consuming parts are picking out the colors for the next row, trying to match the heights, and then running out to the garage to make those cuts. That blackboard made me a little nervous going up because it seemed to stand out a lot from the others, but I think you'll see as the project goes on that it ends up blending really well. So here I'm trying to find a board of a similar height, and it's just not meshing, so I had to take this one out to the table saw. Needing a table saw makes this project a little less DIY friendly, but I don't know how you get around it. It's a natural product, and wood isn't straight, so there are going to be times when you need to take out a bow in a board, or just trim off some to match the height of a neighboring board. Here's a close-up after the cut. You can see we got it the same height as the adjacent board, which is going to help us out in the next row and keep the gaps to a minimum. This is that medium color brown that after it got on the wall it just didn't look right, so I pried it off, which is pretty easy to do. And then once you get the board off, a pair of pliers will take care of any nails still stuck in the wall. One thing to note, while I'm nailing into studs where possible, because we're starting with different length boards, we don't always start or end in a stud, and where two boards butt together may not overlap with a stud. So in that case, I'm just nailing into the drywall, usually at an angle to give the nail a little more hold. So here's where I got into a little trouble. As I got close to the top of the ceiling, it became apparent that the right side of the wall was lower. The wall had a bit of a frown to it, sloping down to the right. So I popped off some of those boards and put them back up, adding a little gap on the right side to even it out with the rest of the wall. This is well above eye level, and so those gaps ended up looking fine. You can't see them from the ground. The manufacturer recommends painting the wall a dark color before you get started. That seemed like a lot of extra work, so I didn't do it. But given that this is a natural product, it has knots in it, and the wood has bows in it, meaning there might be some gaps between your boards. In retrospect, it's probably a good idea. I probably spent an equivalent amount of time taking boards out to the table saw to straighten them out and minimize gaps, as I would have just painting the wall a dark color in the first place, and maybe minimizing that saw work. Because I'm so close to the ceiling, I've stopped using a level in favor of a measuring tape, just measuring to make sure that both sides of the board are an equal distance from the bottom of the crown. So we're getting to the bottom of the stack of boards, and the damaged ones, this one had a big cutout. That's the way it came from the manufacturer, so I just took that out to the saw, cut it off, and used it as a shorter starting piece for the next row. Here's what I had left over, maybe half a dozen full boards and some scrap pieces. So 5 boxes served me well. One small project left, and that's to swap out this white outlet for a brown one that will better match the wall. These J-hooks of copper are wound clockwise around the screw, so it's important with the next outlet to do the same. It's also important that there be no insulation blocking the electrical connection, so it should be screw, bare wire, and then metal underneath. No insulation in that stack. I also needed to extend the outlet box out a 1/4 inch, which is the depth of these boards. They sell extenders for that purpose, but my local box store didn't have the 1/4 inch variety. So instead I took a regular outlet box out to the miter saw and cut off the first 1/4 inch. Which is to say that the miter saw exploded the box, so I bought another one and tried a handsaw. So I took that 1/4 inch sliver of outlet box, slipped it around the outlet, and snugged it into the wall. The screws that I was using were long enough to go through that 1/4 inch extension and into the original outlet box. So here's the final wall. I like again that these boards are double-sided and that they come in so many different colors. There are a couple issues to deal with because it's a natural product. There's going to be bows or knots or other defects in the boards, but once you work through those, I think everything turns out nice.